Good evening. I'd like to call this regular Board of Finance
Recording in progress.
Meeting for Thursday, February 15th, 2024 to order. There we go. I didn't really want to hear myself twice. Thanks. So, item number 1 on our agenda, public forum. Anybody wishing to address the board in public forum? If not, what I'd like to do, if you'll all allow me to, is indicate or at least take a moment to acknowledge at our meeting this evening. I wanted to just, again, take a moment to remember one of our former longtime colleagues, Ken Gammerman, who passed away a week ago today on February 8th. And I was going through and I wanted to put some words together, and I couldn't resist, I came across this picture, which I'm sure our illustrious cameraman will zoom in on as I put these words, or say these words. This was actually a picture of his retirement when our first selectman gave him his certificate of 30 years of service, but just some words I wanted to say. When I first joined the Board of Finance in January 2007 at the very start of the budget season, with absolutely no experience reviewing a municipal budget, there was a seasoned veteran on the board by the name of Ken Gammerman. Ken made it a point to take me under his wing and help guide me through my first months of the budget process. He took an interest in my understanding of municipal finance and budgeting and has been a mentor, a trusted advisor, and a friend in all of my 16 years on the Board of Finance, including after his retirement from the board in 2021, when we continued to meet regularly for breakfast until this past August. Ken served on the Board of Finance for 30 years, many of them as vice chairman, and was elected 7 consecutive terms. He was a man of exceeding capability, integrity, honesty, and fellowship. His dedication and passion to education on so many levels, both national and locally, and his commitment to public service and love for the Guilford community was truly inspiring. Ken sought to preserve the strengths of our town, yet always pushed for more efficient, cost-effective ways to provide the town and educational services expected by taxpayers of Guilford. He never shied away from asking the tough questions to understand the financial commitments required for certain items and the reasoning behind why we should appropriate funds for them. A little background, I believe his obituary, or there were some comments that just got posted today, but Ken graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Queens College, where he earned a master's degree in American history. He served in the U.S. Army, briefly taught high school history, developed educational films for Encyclopedia Britannica, and created 2 educational media companies with his wife of 65 years, Martha. Ken's greatest passion, however, was his family. He was a devoted husband, a loving and supportive father to 3 daughters and sons-in-laws, and a compassionate grandfather to several grandchildren. A life well lived indeed. On behalf of the Board of Finance, I know that Ken Gammerman will be missed immensely by not just me and our board, but by the entire town of Guilford.
Thank you, Mike. That was nice.
That was very nice.
Thank you. I wanted to do right by our colleagues. So. Okay, he'd probably be like, okay, Mike, just put that down, will you? So, nothing further in public forum.
Mike, if I could just...
Oh, please,
echo
anybody on the
Will
board,
sentiment.
please,
I mean,
feel free.
just briefly, it was
Yes.
just such an honor and a privilege to work with Ken Gammerman. And 30 years is really setting the bar.
Yes,
So.
it is. Yes, it is. Thank you, John.
Yep.
Item number 2 on our agenda, approve minutes of our regular meeting minutes of January 16th, 2024. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved?
Second.
Any comments or corrections?
Just a typo on...
Please. Boy, it must be an important typo.
Must have been an important typo. The spelling of Linda Trudeau under Board of Ed officials.
Okay.
And then I had a question I wanted to ask
Yes.
under item number 6 regarding capital. Ms. Malvesi said they will be closing out a couple of the capital bond funds before the end of the year. Is that the end of, I mean, did you mean the end of the year? Like, this is February, so we have like 10 more months to go.
The end of the end of the fiscal year.
Fiscal year, okay.
I had the same exact comment.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
Thank
fiscal,
you.
yeah, sure it was fiscal year, yeah. That was it. That was all I had. Anybody else on those minutes? Otherwise, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? Great, thank you, everyone. Item number 3, correspondence, standing building committee minutes. We have 2 sets. We have the January, which was, as we recall, as I mentioned, was their meeting was delayed from early January, and then their regular meeting minutes from February 6th. So I don't know if the chairman is on from the board of, standing building committee. But does anybody have anything regarding standing building, either January or February? There was quite a bit to take in. I would note one thing on both minutes, sets of minutes under, I believe it's under old business. The item is discussion on how the committee should think about handling small change orders where the standing building committee might have concerns about the change orders. And as of today, I believe that myself, our first selectman, and David DeMeo will be having a meeting on the 27th of February, I believe, to discuss that particular item. So obviously, we'll report back to all of you. I'll report back to all of you. So that is scheduled. Anything else? Anything regarding those?
I have a question, and
Yes.
maybe our first selectman can answer, or maybe the superintendent. Specifically looking at the section with the cost overruns for the remodel of 595 New England Road. And what I was trying to establish is, it looks like it's going to go to 1.6 million and some change. And what I was trying to determine is, maybe about 2 years ago, I think we did a capital bonding for about $1 million for the remodel. And then last year, I think we did another 300,000 for the redecorating. Does the 1.6 million include both of those now, or just the first bond issuance of $1 million?
I think the 300,000 was FF&E, wasn't it?
FF&E, correct.
So that was for furniture, so
that's separate?
that,
Okay, so they are separate items, so we're
actually, it
looking
is a
at
good question.
1.6 for the, or so for the remodel, and then another 300 for the redecoration.
So the initial bonding figure was approximately 900,000.
Right, a couple years ago.
Right, and then the following year, we came back and made the board and the town aware that we were adding an additional bond item for approximately 300,000 for the FF&E.
Right.
We had originally designed the plan expecting to move over existing furniture after we conducted an interview of our various offices, multiple locations, determined it would make more sense to add the FF&E line.
So, but your question is, okay, so the 1.6, is that encompassing the 1 million, the 300,000, and the escalation?
Yeah,
Or is
or
it
are we more closer to
1.6
2
for the
million?
construction plus the 300,000 is a different bond item?
That's all we have bonded at the moment. So,
But now the prevailing wages is back
In play.
in play, so that's going to increase again.
Well, I guess we'll ask the question somewhat differently. The 1.6 includes or does not include the FF&E in terms of the bonding? I honestly, I don't recall. And I know the prevailing, and I know it's going back out because of the prevailing wage issue, because the number went up. And I know that will add, based on my experience, it's probably somewhere around 10%, about a 10% on prevailing wage. I mean, that's kind of the average. Doesn't mean it's, don't quote me on it, but that's just from experience, prevailing wage. But it sounds like that's also from the meeting minutes and from discussions that will be accommodated, based on leftover from other bond, from the bond that the number's coming from. So, but yeah, I wasn't
Sounds
sure
like
about
the answer's
FF&E.
not known. It might be part of that larger number that was quoted, but it may not.
Well, Mary Jane will be able to get to you guys tomorrow.
Sure,
The total
sure.
amount that has been bonded for this project, and then you guys can do the math and figure out what's left to be funded in some form or fashion.
Right, okay.
particularly in light of the prevailing wage.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, John. Anything else on standing building committee minutes? Okay. Item number 2, pension committee. Anything on pension committee? Or investment report? I did not have anything. And item number 3 is OPEB minutes and the report. Anything further under correspondence? Okay, we'll move on to item number 4, review and accept the report of expenditures for the Board of Education for January 2024. Lindsay Trudeau, John Del Ventura. Good evening.
Even
What do you think?
You get that?
Okay, good evening. January financials as presented by Linda Trudeau and her team. Expenditures for the month of January were $6,125,738.98. That is nearly in lockstep with last year's spending at 54.83% of the budget as compared to 54.70. Revenue for January was $317.80 for non-resident tuition, $14,699 for pre-K tuition, $6,500 for tuition from Clinton Public Schools, and $245.39 for our charging stations at GHS. Salaries for January, percentages of the budget expended approximates last year. Employee benefits, percentages expended is lower than the prior year. Our purchase services, in the month of January, we did have the annual payment for the energy performance contract of $424,400.63. The services to the machine lines is over budget due to repairs to Chromebooks. These expenses will be reimbursed from our Chromebook insurance funds. For tuition, the expended amount is lower than the prior year. Supplies and materials, the percentage of the budget expended is lower than the prior year. The credit in the textbook line is due to the transfers of expenditures to the Right to Read grant. For capital, the budget expended is lower than the prior year. And transportation, the budget of the percentage of the budget is approximates last year. The fuel line is higher than the prior year due to timing of deliveries and billing for the fuel from the town. And for the month of January, our warrants total $2,812,323.
Thank you. Questions? The energy performance contract, that amount is, just for clarification, is in the electricity
Yes.
line item? That's why it's the 492. Yeah. Also under purchase services, travel, it's not a huge amount, but it's tracking much higher than last year. Is that due to changes in the budget number, or is it just tracking higher?
No, excuse me, there's a couple things in there. One is we do have a little bit more travel of employees between buildings, so they're putting in for mileage reimbursement.
Okay.
There was also a stipend that is part of the administrative contract for Dr. Freeman that was paid this year. Last year, it was paid to a different account, and I transferred it over at the end of the year. So it's just a timing difference of when that expense hits.
maybe just a little insight into special services? Just running a little hot.
Yes, special services is contracted services for special education students, and some of that is just timing of the bills, and some of it is based on the needs of the students.
As we talk about it month from month to month, the volatility in that area of the education budget is substantial. So while we see it while we focus primarily on tuition, that's another line item in the budget that has some volatility to it.
Yes.
Question.
Sure.
This may be better asked a standing building, I don't know, but when the Johnson Controls came up, are we still in the period where they'll reimburse? How are we doing with the savings? Are they ever reimbursing us? Or is it working out as we expected, or is this better for Mr. DeMayo?
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, okay.
Not sure.
All right, you're stuck with the bill. You know,
Yeah.
you don't see the other half of it. You know what I'm talking
Right,
about.
I can check with Mr. Garneman and see if he can provide some insight on.
Some data, some trends, some data from the last like 5
Just
or
to
6
see.
years to see if there's a downward,
Yeah.
there should be.
Yeah, it'd be
That's
nice
the
to
reason we did
track the performance. Would be interesting for an update.
Yeah.
This was quite a while ago, but I'm curious, is Johnson Controls still doing the monitoring and the measuring, or is that kind of expired? I think that was maybe a 3-year.
They are responsible for true-ups on an annual basis, so.
It's still going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Legal's down as a percentage. Is that a trend that you expect to continue through the year? Is that just timing of invoices?
So last year, we had a lot more contract negotiations and a few other legal matters that were going on. We are going into negotiations with 2 unions, so that'll pick up a little bit. Some of it's, timing of special ed. There seems to be an uptick in some special ed legal coming up, so I don't think it'll be as high as last year, but there's also a difference in the budget. The budget was increased for this year over last year from a little bit, so that throws the percentages off a little.
Okay.
I see bottled heat and bottled gas down a little. Are we actually starting to get that for a little less now? Energy costs? Or did we sign a contract at the beginning, it's just timing?
We've locked in a rate a little bit better than what we were before. We were kind of doing a market rate before, so we have kind of stabilized the rate a little bit. It's only used in the kitchens at 2 schools, so we don't use a lot. So we really can't get, a big discount on what we get.
Okay.
I know you had sent the tuition
Yes.
report to us earlier today, so assuming everyone got it, I always print out a copy because, God forbid, I try to look at it on the screen. I did notice that we're still under budget, which is good, but it's declined. That amount is shrunk a little bit, 75-ish, 75,000-ish, 76.
Change in excess cost, right?
Yeah, so we did add 2 students
Yeah.
to the report, but we also found out that the excess cost grant is going to will be reimbursed at a lower percentage than what we originally anticipated. So it's down to 68.1%, which we haven't seen it that low in quite a while. Actually, I don't know if I remember it being that
Under
low.
70, yeah.
It hasn't been under 70, and we were at 80, 81 last year. So I adjusted the excess cost that we expect. So that alone was about $60,000.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification.
Sure.
Can we spend a minute or two on instructional equipment and site improvements? I think you told us last month, and to tell you the truth, I couldn't find my note on it.
The equipment instructional line will be reimbursed by the capital lease, so that will come back within budget. We've submitted a request. Actually, it just went in because we had to wait for an insurance certificate, so we had to get all that straightened out. So we just put in for the request for that, so that'll come back.
Okay.
Site improvement, that's,
Just some extra project.
it's
went over.
it's
Any,
unanticipated
yeah.
projects, things that we, that come up that need to be fixed, water main, water issues, other repairs that need to be done, so. We have to maintain the building, so
Need water.
we need water. We need to have a safe building.
I have a feeling we're going to hear more about that soon for next year. We can move on to warrants. I had a question that I don't recall seeing, well, there's actually a couple of questions. One of them is, let's see, page 4. Corporate payment systems. I'm sure that's appeared numerous times, but
Yeah,
I
it
just,
has. So we have a district credit card that we are,
okay,
we can use for certain payments,
okay.
and that's that's the way we have to make the payment.
I saw a statement and then credit, so I was wondering what that
Yeah,
was, okay. The other thing I noticed, and again, hadn't noticed it before, but, and of course, there's, all of these are name removed for privacy, so I'm not asking, obviously, for names. But there were work hours, November, December, that were associated with them. Mileage I get, you know, because I get the whole mileage thing, but work hours was, I don't remember
So,
seeing that before.
Some of the special education students work within the community,
Okay.
and we pay them a stipend for their work.
Okay.
And then they take that paycheck, and it's part of their
Okay.
further education of taking it to the bank and handling money and life skills, shopping, so.
Is that something recent that just started?
It's been going on
It's been going on?
for all of this year.
I always remember seeing the name removed for privacy, so I get that, but I don't remember work hours. But
It's been
I
on
totally
for-
get it, and I thought that might be what it was, but I wanted you to.
Yeah.
As we have expanded the transition programs, the one we do collaboratively
Right.
with Madison and Clinton.
Okay.
And now the Transition Academy housed wholly here in Guilford, you're
Okay.
seeing more of that.
Okay, well, and that's probably why, it probably was one or two every once in a while, but there were quite a few of them for November, December, and I just couldn't remember that many, so that's great, that's fine. Anybody else have any questions on warrants?
I do.
Go ahead.
To Cogen for Guilford High School monthly maintenance, what maintenance for, what is the maintenance?
It's the Ticogen, it's the.
HVAC?
It's HVAC.
I'm sorry,
system.
what?
HVAC
Oh,
system in high school.
Which one was that? What was that?
Ticogen.
Cogen?
Oh, start T?
14 of it.
Thank you, T Cogen.
And then, there was a payment for, New Solutions K through 12, a special ed review. What exactly do they do? Page 10.
They're an outside evaluator. They're looking at our special education programming, pre-K through 4 specifically. They're looking at our staffing levels. They're also looking at the models that we are using around centralizing and creating some of the programs district-wide versus at home in the 4 elementary schools. We hope that they will make recommendations that will help us to be more efficient, improve the quality and the efficiency of the programming that we're offering.
So like a consultant, they're looking at the program.
That's exactly right. They're here this week interviewing teachers and administrators and central office staff. I sat with them just yesterday.
And then one other question I had was on the employee assistance program. Are there many people that are using it? Do you know the numbers?
Which particular program?
The employee assistance program.
We do get kind of a high-level report of what
Yeah.
is being used, and it is being used.
So it's worth the 13,000 that the district is paying for, you feel?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just curious, back on that New Solutions, where would that be found? Is that under professional services?
In the professional services line.
Yeah,
And I'm sorry, just go back on that too. It's New Solutions K through 12, but they're focusing primarily on
4.
K through 4?
I think K through 12 is part of their name.
Okay.
We asked them specifically to look at our services K through 4.
Okay.
They're less centralized than anything else. It's our youngest students, and we have a significant investment in both certified and paraprofessional staff at that level. We wanted that outside opinion.
anything on minutes or operating minutes, regular or operating minutes? Anything else from?
That's all we got.
That's it? That's all you got? Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would like to entertain a motion to accept the report of expenditures for the Board of Education for January 2024 in the amount of $6,125,738.98.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions, recusals? Thank you. Item number 5, review and approve the report of expenditures for town government for January 2024. Good evening, Mary Jane.
Good evening. I'd like to start by answering the question earlier about 595 New England Road. Back in December, we approved a transfer of an additional $500,000 from an HVAC project into 595. It was done through this committee.
Okay. Yeah.
I forgot at the top of my
Well,
head as well.
evidently,
So
so do we.
but
So
yes, so
thank
that
you.
was an
Thank you
additional
for looking at it.
500,000
Okay.
that was just approved in December
Okay.
from another bond.
Okay.
It's through the same bond, just another project within the bond.
Right, okay. All right, thank you.
So that's brings the funding up.
Okay. Now to the good stuff. Revenue?
So as through the end of January, 58% through the year, we are 92.2% collected, a little bit lower than we were this time last year, which is due to how we increased our budgets. Couple things I wanted to note. On the town clerk side, that is a little bit lower. We did increase her budget, and because the funding isn't coming in, you will see a reduction in her budget coming for 2025. On the flip side, under finance and the fire department, due to the increase in revenue this year, you will see an increase in the budgets for fiscal '25 for both of those, and we can discuss that as we move forward through the budget process. Those are the only ones I really wanted to specifically mention, unless anybody has any questions.
We don't believe so. I know Parks and Rec.
Park and Rec will come in
they-
later in the
They come in
year,
later in
yep.
the spring.
Come
so,
spring with
yeah. But they're tracking higher than last year, but they're behind,
correct.
but they always make it up.
Mhm.
Okay. Anything else on anything, revenues? Okay. Expenses?
On the expense side, we are 59% spent, practically right on where we should be at this time. I will note that we have 2 line items that are showing overdrawn at the moment. The first is a capital. We, as you know, when we go through the budget, there's a number of items that we expend, but that we use the funding that we've set aside in fund balance from the surplus from prior years. So that will be funded through that. The other one is the debt. As you know, when we budget our debt, we do use premium credits that we've received from our bonding, and we do budget a portion of those to be used to offset this budget. Our final bonding debt will be paid this month, so for once February is done, that number will be complete, and I'll be able to come back to you for that transfer. Other than that, take questions on particular line items.
That's great, silence is golden.
I think we noted last month that legal was tracking lower than typical.
Yes, we
We
had
brought
some
that-
money in there for some contracts that we'll be working on the second half of
It's
this.
going to catch up.
It's going to catch up.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. All right, anything else on expenses? Otherwise, we can move into the warrants. I did have a couple of questions. Silktown roofing on the slate roof replacement appears both under special fund and on the weekly. And I was wondering why there were, is it
2 different funds.
two different funds? Okay. Because they were almost stated,
We had
the
right.
exact same way with, obviously with different amounts. And I was looking, I was going, it must be different funds.
I'm not sure you're aware, but that particular, that contract came in much higher than
Yeah.
was originally budgeted for, so the money we had set aside was not enough.
Right,
So
okay.
it's to other source.
Yeah, I see, yeah, because the department was capital and the other one was bond.
Correct, yeah, so
there
there
you go.
wasn't enough in the capital account, so we were
Yeah.
able to utilize some bonding funds from another roofing project.
Okay. The other question I had was just right below that. Guilford Foundation, the consultant, and I know that was for administrative services.
Yep.
In the invoice, it said 2. Is that the second? I know that there was a certain percentage, I think it was 5% of the amount was
Yeah, so
dedicated to administrative fees. I was
They
just-
first billed us for specifically just the grants, and then they came back and billed us for a portion of the administrative fee.
Okay, was that indicating a second invoice, this invoice number 2, and are there more invoices coming regarding the consultant for administration services for
I don't know
foundation?
what the total amount is, I'd have to I don't, off the top of my head, I don't remember
Okay.
what the total amount was. I think it was about 90,000
Okay.
that we needed to pay
Well,
them.
and that's about half,
So that's about half,
Yeah,
right.
okay. Makes sense.
I think I have 90 budgeted in the ARPA funds for that.
Yeah. I know there was a stipulated
Mm-hmm.
amount for that, so, okay. Okay, anything under warrants? Otherwise, we can move over to medical.
So for medical, we had another low month in January, $885,000. As you'll see under stop loss, we are now caught up, so you'll see that we just paid the 1 month for January. As far as stop loss, we do have about $1.6 million over the $75,000 claim limit, which is where we start to track, yet only $70,000 covered by the stop loss over the $150,000. We have 14 people, or 14 claims over the $75,000, which is up 3 from last month, and 3 members over the $150,000, which is up 1 from last month. Still only 5% of stop loss at the moment. Projected surplus being $1.2 million. Again, we do anticipate the rest of the year to be a bump.
Which shows when you look at last year.
When you look at last year, you see that, correct?
And I do know we're in month number 7 now, and based on comments, I believe it was last month from our first selectman, I think we're getting to the point where in the next month or 2, we should seriously consider, I think we want to let it play out a little bit more for the next couple months, but seriously consider taking some of that fund balance and maybe applying it to OPEB. So just something to consider as a transfer, if it continues to trend this way, which it, of course, we know may or may not, but. So
Will we be taking a look at the ISL premium going forward? Have we had a couple of years now where it hasn't really worked?
This is this is the lower amount. We just went out to bid last year for it.
Yep.
So, we probably won't bid that out separately for a couple of years. We had significant savings in stop loss
Yeah.
with this company. I'd hate to go back out for RFP right away. But we are looking at the medical. Our consultant lets us know every month where we're standing, and what we could do with other companies. So we're constantly looking at just the medical side as well. But the stop loss will most likely keep the current carrier for a couple of years at least.
But our premium might be reduced based on our activity or lack of activity, even if you don't go out to.
It could, yes, it could, yes. Although all of the medical is typically based on, a few years of history, so
Right, it'll help us at some point.
it's absolutely right.
Have you done like a little look back to see if we've been able to cover our ISL premiums over the last few years?
Well, we covered them every year for many years. It's only been the last few
I was
that we
I'm trying to remember
haven't.
when the last time was. It
Yeah,
was-
I'd have to look that up,
Years
but
ago.
we consistently covered stop loss for most of the years. It's just been in the last few.
How's the interface between, because when we switched, the administrator and the company weren't the same as it was kind of one entity that was doing it, and there was some transition
Right,
to that new model.
Well, so all of the claims are run through Anthem. So when Anthem was our stop-loss carrier, it just flowed through, we got the benefit of the stop-loss. Now, with the separate carrier, we pay a separate fee, we invoice to the stop-loss carrier, and they have to reimburse us. So that's lagging at the moment. But as you can see, we're only at, was it say 60,000? We have a bill out right now for about 35,000, our first bill. So that's lagging at the moment. So there's always going to be a lag for the reimbursement back to us. That's really the only change to the process. But everything's working well, as far as using, with both companies. We're not experiencing any difficulty.
Have we taken any money out of the surplus yet this year?
No.
Okay.
Excuse me, anything else for Mary Jane? Town? Okay. Entertain a motion to approve the report of expenditures of the town government for January 2024 in the amount of $2,677,330.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed, abstentions, recusals? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item number 6, receive the proposed Board of Education budget for fiscal year 2024-2025. Dr. Freeman, Dr. Balistraci. Good evening.
Well, Dr. Freeman is pulling up the presentation. I'll just start us off. So at the beginning of January, Dr. Freeman and the administration presented the Board of Education with a proposed draft budget for the 2024-2025 school year. We had a month to really dive in. Dr. Freeman presented it officially at our January 8th meeting. We held 2 public forums on the budget on Tuesday, January 22nd and Wednesday, January 23rd. We also received, Board of Ed members received a number of emails. There were a couple of foci of those communications. One was athletics, which is also what we heard, and I think we shared this with you in October at our public forum on the budget, which is the time when folks come to us and say, you don't have a budget yet, but we'd really like you to think about X, Y, and Z. So athletics continued to be a discussion. We heard from a number of parents around kindergarten enrollment this current school year we're in. There is a wider than typical variation in class size. So as I think we've shared with you a number of times, for elementary schools, there's always going to be a little bit of variation. And the administration is looking at enrollment for months as we move into a school year, and the kindergarten is the biggest unknown until we get there. So there were requests that we look at enrollment, and honestly, there were requests for attempted equity in enrollment, and there was a request for an additional teacher, and that's going to be important just as I present a little bit of what we discussed. And I think that encompasses most of the public comment. We got an email from the music boosters just thanking the board for continued support of music and the arts in the schools. And we had a couple of questions concerned about our universal assessment, and Dr. Freeman and the staff, Dr. Goss, are able to assure people that, in fact,
we do universal screening. This was, we had the budget that was given to us. We took, as a board, time to discuss enrollment, time to discuss positions, time to discuss athletics. And we felt, as we have felt for many years, that the budget that was brought to us was thoughtful, was very careful, was financially responsible. We are also aware that in the current climate, and we are not unlike districts across the state, our percentage increases are coming in higher than they did 2 years ago, in 3 and 4 and 5. So we looked at the budget and made the decision to make some cuts that brought us from the proposed 5.46% to a 5.08%, which is what you see before you. A couple of the reductions were made, well, the first one, pension, $21,000 decrease, is represented in the budget brought to you tonight because we got updated numbers. As you well know, the administration is crafting this budget sometimes on preliminary numbers, so we're able to reduce there. The site improvement line had a $90,000 allocation for 595 improvements. Working with the town, Cliff Gurnham was able to get approval for use in an appropriate existing bond to cover that, so we certainly didn't want to duplicate that ask. We did reduce that line by $30,000 because, as you heard just a little bit earlier this evening, that line is running over and often runs over. So there's going to be a reassessment of the needs for that. In a long discussion around enrollment, we did decrease by one proposed classroom teacher. Without going into a great deal of discussion, because we had three kindergarten classes at LEAT this year with 13 apiece, we didn't feel like it was fiscally responsible to carry over class size that low into first grade. By creating 2 first grade classrooms, we are still below our Board of Ed recommendations for first grade of 16 to 22 students. It would be a class of 19 and a class of 20. And so we were really trying to be very careful there. This is at LEAT. To avoid potential confusion, the request was for a 4th grade teacher at LEAT. The Board of Ed decided to take that out of the budget, but then asked that there was essentially a shuffling right within LEAT, so that the 4th grade gets the 3rd teacher they need, but that's going to come from a total that accommodates a switch from 3 to 2 first grade teachers. And then lastly, we had a discussion about safety monitors. There were 6 safety monitors funded with ARPA funds last year from the town. We had a long discussion about those, also understanding the SROs, student resource officers, going to 3 next year, and so reduced the additional safety monitors by 4. That became a reduction then of $261,000, and again brought the budget down to 5.08. So again, this is just an explanation of what got us to this point. What I want to do now is turn it over to Dr. Freeman so he can give you really a detailed look at the budget that's coming before you tonight.
Thank you very much, Dr. Balstrase, and thank you for having us tonight. So I'm happy to run the board through an explanation of that 5.08. Without spending too much time on introductory slides, I just want to remind the board and the viewing public that our budget is built on our portrait of a graduate. The budget is built upon a set of assumptions each year that we highlight for you. We look first to ensure that we provide a safe and healthy school environment. We look second, and this is our mission, to maintain our focus on instruction and learning. We remind the board every year that we are constantly looking to improve. We have never once brought you a status quo budget and have no intention of doing so. It's our job to improve the service here every year. And then finally, that the budget is built on a thoughtful reflection upon the resources that we have and a creative consideration of using or repurposing any of those existing resources before asking for new resources. And finally, the budget is built every year on a projected enrollment. This year, we look to be decreasing by approximately 24 students district-wide, but it is important to note, and we expect to see this in years to come, the K-4 enrollment for the first time in some time is projected to increase next year. We contracted with the SLAM Collaborative last year. We had another 10-year enrollment projection. We look to be stabilizing and slowly beginning to increase over the next 5 years, and then increasing more precipitously from 5 to 10 years out. And so while we are looking at an enrollment reduction, 24 students spread across 13 grades in 7 different locations is a relatively flat enrollment projection on which this is built. The budget request, therefore, that we bring forward and share with you tonight comes in at an annual request of $72,157,151. That's an increase over the current fiscal year of $3,490,979, or, as Dr. Balistraci noted, a percent increase over the current year's budget of 5.08%. I do think it's important to put that request into some context. And so also, as Dr. Balistraci noted, the last 2 years have been years we recognize of significant increase at 5.18% and 4.78%. Both of those 2 preceding years, as you well know, were driven by significant medical cost increases. Those increases were driven much more by the medical increase than by discretionary investments that we were making in the program. The 6 years prior to that, we were running at below 2% increases. And so in some of this budget presentation tonight, I want to note that some of the instructional investments we feel have been deferred for the last several years, because the last 2 years we needed to focus on that medical increase and didn't feel that we could bring increases larger than the ones on the screen. But some of those investments we will point out to you tonight. Some of those deferred investments make an appearance in this budget, and we will highlight those for you tonight. We also like to take a moment to remind, again, this board and the community that the budget is built on efficiencies as much as it's built on costs and investments. This year, we continue to look to special education. While it continues to be one of our most volatile and one of our most important areas to invest in, it has stabilized over the past several years. We are trending, while the cost continues to increase, we're trending better overall. The Transition Academy is another recent example of bringing a program in district, and while we invest in that local spending, it reduces the overall cost. It would be more expensive to be sending those students out for tuition-based placements elsewhere. Medical spending was a positive this year. After 2 years of really driving the cost, this year we actually experience a reduction. There are increased instructional coaching positions at the elementary level specifically this year. We will, for the first time, be reaching a level where there is a dedicated math instructional coach at each elementary school and at the middle levels. We've never had that before. We've had dedicated literacy coaches, and math coaches have split buildings, shared that responsibility. We achieved that level this year, however, through restructuring. There's no additional monies requested in this budget for additional coaching positions. We have taken 2 positions that were previously district-wide positions and that were sort of distributed across multiple buildings and reallocated them to a building and a mathematics focus so that we achieve more direct teacher contact at the instructional level. Again, without asking for new monies. It's an example of that creative looking at existing resources before asking for new. And again, I need to continue to thank the building level principals, teachers, and parents in the Guilford community, because we continue to keep building level supplies, materials requests low because teachers are frugal, principals are at times tyrannical with how they release the money, and parents are generous in providing our students with many of the materials that are necessary in a classroom setting. This is just an illustration of that special education spending that we had talked about. You see how to the left of the chart, the spending every year was a roller coaster. It is volatile, it is difficult to predict. The blue line is our budgeted line, the red line is our actual spending. You will note how, again, to the left of this chart, we knew what was going to happen. We were always trending in the right direction with our budget, but we maintained a gap for several years where we were not budgeting and filling the needs. We were therefore freezing budgets, and we were drawing dollars from other places in the budget to fill that gap between budgeted and actual special education expenditures. You see how, as we move to the right of the chart, we leveled the actual spending for a number of years, and were able to use that leveling to have the budget catch up with the actual spending. We had 2 years where we were actually coming in under. The last 2 to 3 years that you see on the chart are in some ways a reflection of the impact of the pandemic. And most recently this year, that is in part impacted by a new state mandate where we are now responsible for students through the conclusion of the school year in which they turn 22, and that is a new expectation. Some years ago, we were responsible for students until the school year in which they finished their 21st birthday. Then it moved to the actual date of the 22nd birthday, and now it is moving to the school year in which they turn 22. That means we're now responsible for some students until they are 23 years old. That had a significant impact on spending this year, and so you do see an uptick in the budgeted spend in special education as we move into this year. We're really proud of the work that we've done to level special education spending and make it more predictable and to be budgeting more accurately over the last several years. Additionally, I mentioned that the medical cost is actually down this year, and that allows us this year to move those dollars to some degree. We know that medical spending, like special education, is volatile, and it can change from year to year. We do not know exactly what to anticipate for next year. And then we like to focus, and it builds the story of the budget each year, by looking at what the cost drivers are. We consider these cost drivers, these cost areas, in large part to be non-discretionary. And this year, there are 6 real cost centers that are driving in large part the increase that you see in front of you tonight and this year in this budget. And the first is salaries. Dr. Balistraci mentioned the environment that we work in. This year we are taking on for the first year a new teacher contract, and that teacher contract has more significant increases in each of the 3 years of the contract than we have seen before. That's not different in Guilford, and in fact the contract that we agreed to with our teachers, while it is absolutely well earned, is lower than was seen in a lot of other districts. As we move into or continue into this era of teacher shortages, we are going to need to remain competitive with other Connecticut school districts if we want to be able to attract, hire, and retain the best teachers. So in large part, that is due to salary increases, not just in the teacher contract, but we've seen salary increases in other areas as well. It also includes increases in the cost of substitutes. We're having a harder time finding substitutes. When we have a vacancy and fill that vacancy, the pool is much more competitive. We're also oftentimes, in fact, not recognizing retirement savings when we have a vacancy. At times, we have had to fill positions at a higher cost than the teacher who has left. Recently, we had a teacher with some 15, 17 years of experience who left us, and we ended up filling that position with a 20-year veteran from a neighboring district. And that's just the competitive environment that we find ourselves in. This salary increase that you see on this slide does not include any of the new positions, any of the investments that we'll talk about on the next slide. I want to make that clear. This cost would be here if we were simply rolling over existing positions from this year to next. We again saw an increase in transportation, including the cost of fuel. This includes transportation for regular education, the buses that we run every morning and afternoon, as well as special education increases costs for transportation, and some increased costs for athletic transportation. It's a significant increase this year. While we continue to be proud of the programs that we build in district, and while those continue to provide both better service to our local students as well as helping us to control costs, tuition costs continue to be a reality, and they are going up again this year. It is simply some of our students require those services, we provide those services, and the costs are increasing. Contracted services, you mentioned during an earlier part of your meeting tonight. While we do keep more students at home, the students that we are keeping at home have significant needs, and at times we need to contract services in to supplement our own staff in meeting the needs of those students. And again, those costs are increasing as well as the student needs increasing. Software is a significant increase this year, and I do want to note that that includes expanded security software, as well as some of the existing contracts, and the fact that those costs are simply going up. And while it's not a particularly large number, the cost of electricity is going up. So while we work with the different opportunities to reduce those costs continue to increase as well. And at times, all the work we put into keeping the costs down often becomes a cost avoided rather than an actual black and white savings that we're able to present to you. Those 6 line items alone represent a cost increase of $2.6 million. And again, those cost increases are non-discretionary. They are the cost of doing business. They would be in place if we simply rolled this year's budget into next year. Those non-discretionary cost centers, that increase represents an increase of 3.7% all on its own. If it weren't for any of the other investments that we're about to talk to you about, the budget would still be increasing by a 3.7% increase. And just to remind you, the total increase in the budget is 3.4, about 3.5%, million. And this slide represents 2.6 of that total increase. Much of the rest of that is presented to you here on this slide. We mentioned under the budget assumptions that we never come forward to you with just a status quo budget. We do believe that it is our job to continue to improve this district year over year. And for the last 2 years, in light of those medical increases, we've deferred some of the important investments that we feel we need to make. This year, some of those investments are presented here. The first 4 positions that you see, a kindergarten position here at the Lakes Elementary School, that is in district now. That position was added because we enrolled over 60 kindergarten students when we opened the doors for this coming school year. Last year at this time, we were projecting 3 sections of kindergarten in each school, and we needed to add an additional section at Lakes. This budget includes a special education position at Baldwin Middle School that likewise is in place. When we opened the school, we realized we had more needs at Baldwin. We added a special education position to meet those needs. The district-wide social work position and the district-wide school psychologist position that you see have been in the budget for the last 2 years now. This is the 3 years with this current year. However, those positions have been paid for by ESSER funds. We spoke to you about those positions this time last year, and while we are finally expending the last of the ESSER dollars to pay for those, we were hopeful that we would be able to secure a competitive mental health grant. The state has run 2 rounds of that grant. We have applied for each of those rounds, and we did not secure one of those grants. So those first 4 positions are positions that are in our schools working with students today. They will be in our schools working with students tomorrow. But if we want them to be in our schools working with students next September when we open the doors, they need to be built into the operating budget. We can't continue counting on grants to fund the bottom 2, and the first 2 were added because of student needs, enrollment-driven needs, and special education needs. So you see very specific dollar amounts associated with each of those because, as I said, the positions are filled. We know exactly what the cost will be next year. And we began this investment slide by looking at holding on to the investments that we are currently making. You then see 4 suggested investments. These are new certified instructional positions that we are looking to add next year as we move forward. One is a very minor increase. It is a 0.2 increase for a health certified PE teacher. We will be adopting a new health and wellness curriculum, and we are looking to have more health classes as well as PE classes scheduled in the gymnasium. It's a minor increase, but it will be necessary to cover those additional classes at the high school this year. You see an increase of a drama teacher at Adams. We are looking to change the way that specials classes are scheduled at Adams Middle School. These include art and the music offerings and technology education, as well as world language. With the addition of one more specials teacher, specifically we're looking for a drama teacher, it will allow Principal Mullen to begin scheduling the specials at Adams as electives, more in the way that students at the high school are able to make choices and tailor their schedules, picking the areas of interest and beginning to explore those areas of interest. Currently, the specials classes at Adams are scheduled in the same way that they're scheduled at Baldwin and, in fact, at our elementary schools. Every child takes an art class, takes a specific tech ed class, takes certain music offerings. This will give the students more control, more choice, and allow them to begin tailoring their experience in the 7th grade rather than waiting to the 9th grade to be able to make those decisions. You also see another increased school psychologist position, specifically at Lakes. Lakes is our largest elementary school by enrollment, K through 12. Additionally, it houses 2 district-wide programs at this time of the district-wide pre-K program, as well as a program for students birth to 3 who need special educational services delivered in a school setting rather than at home. So again, that's an increased need. The board spoke about that a little bit earlier this week at their regular meeting. And another special education position, half-time, part-time special education position at Adams. The needs that we recognize at Baldwin this year move through Baldwin will be needs at Adams, and so again, you're seeing those investments there. The narrative of this year's budget is slightly different in that the importance of non-certified positions this year almost outstrips the importance of the certified positions that we've talked about. So all of those certified positions we see as important investments in the budget and in the programming this year. Additionally, that next cluster of bullets points to non-certified positions. In several of the meetings that the Board of Ed has had with our leadership team in the last couple of years, the principals have talked specifically about the importance of non-certified positions and in the way in which those non-certified positions insulate the teachers and the principals themselves in the face of this teacher shortage. When we are understaffed, when we have more teachers call out than we can find substitutes to come into a building for the day, somebody has to cover those classes and has to be with those students. And oftentimes, that is a teacher covering a colleague's class, it is us collapsing 2 classrooms together, or it is a principal setting aside her work for the day and covering mathematics or art instruction. And that is not what we pay the principals to do. That's the most expensive substitute that you can find. When we have non-certified positions that are budgeted properly, assigned well, and when we can fill those positions, those non-certified positions insulate, on the one hand, they reduce the number of absences we have. Teachers call out in addition to being sick because they're tired and exhausted. And when you are short your paraprofessional, when you are covering a colleague's class, when you are stepping up to be in recess duty as well as your own instructional and preparation periods, we're seeing the rate of absenteeism go up at the same time that we're having trouble filling para positions and finding substitutes. So this invests in a number of those ancillary positions, but I don't want the word ancillary to be heard or translated to unimportant. They're enormously important. This budget includes, as Dr. Balistraci noted, 2 additional safety monitor positions. This year we've had 6 of those positions and they've been covered by ARPA funds on the town side. We're not carrying over all 6 of those positions because, again, we recognize the magnitude of this budget, but we're adding 2 of those positions to our operational budget moving forward. This budget recognizes the need for 5 additional paraprofessional positions. Those would be specifically dedicated to special education staffing and services. We include the addition of 1 HVAC maintainer position district-wide. I do want to note that that $90,000 increase in salaries has been reduced from a contracted service line. We believe that we will be better served having a full-time HVAC maintainer of our own, addressing needs when they arise, and in fact doing more preventative work on our systems rather than calling in a service company to provide service. So this position pays for itself in a reduction that happens elsewhere in the budget. We've added a .5 custodial position as we see more needs at the Transition Academy as well as some of the offices. It's worth noting that central office locations don't have full-time custodial staffing, and with the increasing enrollment at the Transition Academy, we see a need for a half-time custodian, and then a 1.0 health aide. This health aide travels among the elementary schools primarily, picking up services like scoliosis screening, hearing, and vision screening so that the actual nurse assigned to the building can continue to focus on students, wellness issues, illnesses that crop up, and medication distribution. And by staggering, rather than doing all the vision screenings in the schools in the same week, we stagger those, and the aide is able to travel around and provide those services. And so, again, that's actually a position that should be listed as existing. That health position has been also covered with ARPA funds. Those expire this year. We've recognized the importance of having and want to continue that position. So the narrative this year is as much about the non-certified positions as it is about the certified positions. And Dr. Balistraci also noted that when we've had public hearings on this budget in past years and again this year, much of what we hear comes from the athletic community. So we continue a trend of making investments into the athletic program, adding more coaching positions. The first few that you see there are assistant coaching positions, but cheerleading is actually a head coach position, and this is the return of cheerleading. We eliminated it from the budget a number of years ago because of lack of interest. This year, we have had a cheerleading team and a cheerleading coach. It is all being done for volunteer, and the numbers are significant enough that we are looking to return it to the budget and support that program option as well as continued investment in ice and pool time. Since the ribbon cutting at the new high school and the renovations that have happened on the heels of that, like the addition of the second turf field, the renovation of the stadium turf field and track, the renovation of the tennis courts here this past summer, there is not a varsity high school athlete who competes on a surface that is older than 2015, now that those tennis courts have been renovated. But we don't provide a hockey rink or a swimming pool to the students who engage in those activities. For the past several years, families have raised the dollars to pick up those costs through contributions they make, through cookie sales, bake sales, car washes. We've committed to try to invest more in those ancillary costs so that we can say that we provide the facilities for every varsity athlete, and to do so with pool time and ice time now means to cover the rental pieces for those. This slide is much more exciting for me to talk about than the last slide is, and there's a lot more bullets on there. There were only 6 sides on the last bullet that represented 3.6 million. There's a lot of bullets here, but all added up, these bullets represent $883,000. These investments that we ask for in this year's budget represent only a 1.2% increase. If we were to take all of this out and bring forward that status quo budget that I have said we have no intention of bringing forward, it would only reduce the budget ask this year by 1%. We believe that it is not time to stop investing in our students, that this 1% investment is important moving forward. To show you where those positions, because most of the items on that list are positions, I want to note that there are no administrative increases being asked for in this budget. I mentioned earlier that there are no instructional coaching positions asked for in this budget. Instructional coaches fall within that teacher column, but oftentimes we find ourselves talking about them differently. Again, I want to note there are no administrative increases, there are no instructional coaching increases in this budget. There is a gross increase of 6.7 teaching positions, but there is an offset of 2 positions. We have been unable to hire world language teachers at the elementary level in this environment. Acknowledging that reality, we did not offer world language in 2 of the 4 elementaries last year. We're currently not offering world language in any of the 4 elementaries this year because of our inability to fill those positions. We've recognized that reality and we've changed the budgeting going forward. So those positions are netted out of this budget. We know that we will not be able to fill those next year moving forward either. So there are a net total of 4.7 teaching positions. You then see the increase of 5 paraprofessional positions, the increase of 1.5 custodial and maintenance positions, and the increase of the 2 safety monitors that I mentioned moving forward. This is a budget that focuses on instruction and building level. And we have talked about teacher shifts over time. The fact is the enrollment is decreasing, if slightly this year, and we know that it's been on a trend of decreasing. We have reduced teaching positions in the district. We have reduced elementary classroom positions over the last several years. We've eliminated elementary world language. We've reduced the number of world language positions at the middle level. We've reduced PE, music, math, and a handful of years ago, we reduced a full 6 FTEs in English language arts at the middle level. While we have made those reductions in response to the enrollment declines, however, we have again repurposed many of those positions. We have increased with full-day kindergarten, doubling the number of kindergarten teachers it takes to deliver that program. That's now 6 or 7 years ago, if not more. We've increased elementary art, doubling the number of positions in that area. And as you see this year again, we have been on a trend of increasing district-wide school psychologists and social workers, as well as special education teaching positions. While there are no instructional coach increases in this year's budget, there have been over the last several years, and we continue to believe that that is one of the best efficiencies. It's the best way to deliver professional development to our teaching staff by having on-site embedded professional developers. To be a little more specific about those special ed increases, from 2017 and 18 school year to this projected budget, we've seen the number of school psychologists increase from 5 to 8. We've seen social workers increase from 8 to 10. And significantly, as we have built those in-district programs that I have talked about that allow us to keep our kids in district, we've increased special education teachers in that time frame from 39 to 47. And we believe that is in part responsible for the leveling and the predictability that you saw in the special education graphic that we shared earlier. More importantly, it's what's needed to meet the needs of our children. And again, the Board of Ed spoke about those needs at this Monday's meeting. And if anybody watched this Board of Education meeting, you saw the importance and the continued need to invest in all of our students, including our students with special learning needs, and to invest in the social emotional wellness of all of our students. Remember that school psychologists and social workers, while they do support our special education population, support our entire school population and help students and families deal with the challenges and the struggles that they're facing. Again, we believe that the budget we bring forward this year, and while it's in alignment with the last 2 years more than it's in alignment with the 6 years before that, we believe that the justification for that increase in part lies in that history. 6 years of increases below 2%. The most recent 2 years really being driven by those medical increases, the impact of the teacher shortage, and the fact that the instructional investments in this budget really are modest, around 1% when you compare it to the overall increase. We believe that there is good reason for making those investments and for moving this budget forward. We don't believe that this is a time to reduce the service that we present to our students. This budget invests in safety and security enhancements. It invests in the continued delivery of special services. It invests in the athletic concerns that we hear our community ask for year over year. And most importantly, it invests in that continual instructional and academic excellence that Guilford expects from our schools. I'm getting near done, I promise. In addition to the operational budget, we will be moving forward a bonding request this year as well. The bonding request is built on 4 projects. One is a piping, ventilation, and oil tank replacement at Melissa Jones. We've had several issues with pipes corroding and bursting at Melissa Jones. In a number of areas of the school, those pipes, the water pipes, heating pipes need to be replaced. The oil tank is also at the end of its life. This is the single largest capital improvement that we're asking for this year at $925,000. Additionally, this budget asks for a district-wide fiber and internet infrastructure, all of the upgrades that we are making as we continue to improve the buildings, as we bring in upgraded communications systems, security systems, even as we bring in new copier contracts. All of those services run through the internet at this time. All of those devices are Wi-Fi enabled, and we want to make sure that we have a robust infrastructure so that that system is reliable and can handle all of the demands that we place on it. Instructional, facility, security, it all runs through the infrastructure at this time. Additionally, at the high school, Adams, and at Baldwin, there is an investment in cell signal repeaters. We have done cell surveys at the 4 elementary schools. We've added robust cell repeaters both to Cox and to Lakes. This is not just convenience, this is a security interest as well. And so we want to do the same at the high school at Adams and at Baldwin. And finally, I talked about the investment in those athletic areas. The tennis court at Lakes, and this is a single tennis court, but the tennis court at Lakes is cracked, the surface is beyond its life. That court needs to be replaced and resurfaced at this time. While that is part of the school program and students do use that surface for both PE and recess during the school day, it's also another community resource outside of the school hours. Evenings, weekends, and summer, that's a tennis court. It is lined for pickleball, and that is a tennis court that can be used by the community outside of school hours. There is an additional line here for architectural and engineering costs for future projects moving forward so that we can plan and bring you reliable projections. This all comes together for a bonding request of $2,452,080 that we will move forward along with the operating budget. And that just leads me to close with reminding the board and reminding the community once again that the Guilford Public Schools continues to be one of the best returns on investment that any community is going to see anywhere. Guilford Schools continues to be recognized as a lighthouse school district around the state. We continue to entertain requests from districts around the state to come and visit and to see what we're doing. We take pride in the program that we provide, in the achievements that our students put out there in any venue, whether it's on the stage, on an athletic court, or in the classrooms every day. And we remain doggedly focused on learning and on instruction. And I'll share this with you once again. We've shared similar graphics with you in the past. If you plot our per student expenditure, which runs horizontally across the bottom of the table, the graphic, against our performance on the state's accountability index. The accountability index is the single most holistic measure that the state of Connecticut has, that it collects. It looks at all of our standardized test scores from grade 3 through grade 12. It looks at attendance. It looks at college course offerings. It looks at every facet. It scores each school district on 14 different criteria. When you take any K-12 district in DIRG A or DIRG B that is scored on the same complete 14 points and plot their per student expenditure versus their performance on this holistic measure, you really only see 2 districts that outperform us in a significant way. So we are the green arrow in the middle, and when you look to the upper left-hand quadrant, you see 2 districts in that quadrant who spend less and score what I would say is statistically significantly above us. Now, there's other districts that outscore us, but they also significantly outspend us. You'll also see other districts that outspend us and score lower than we do on the measure. We will look at that kind of return on investment and be pleased with it any day. You can also be assured we've reached out to those 2 school districts on the left and the upper left-hand quadrant to look at what they're doing and to figure out how we can continue to perform at this level or higher and continue to do it in a way that is efficient and responsible and fair to the taxpayers of Guilford, not just to the students of Guilford. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Dr. Balistraci.
Really, just to echo this last slide, the other thing I do every year is look at the school and state finance project in Connecticut to see where we are in terms of per pupil spending. And for the 2021-22 net current expenditures, which is the most recent data available across the state, Guilford is ranked 77th out of 166 school districts in spending, meaning that 76 districts are spending less per pupil, but almost 100 are spending more per pupil. So I think this slide really speaks to the return on investment, both in terms of financial investment and in terms of product and excellence. But in terms purely of spending, we are in the lower half of spending in the state. So we are here tonight and will be, obviously, as you move forward, to help answer any of your questions regarding this proposed budget.
Thank you. Dr. Balistraci, Dr. Freeman, thank you very much. Just before we bring the town up in our first selectman, just a reminder, this goes for the town as well. We've been, as a board, involved in this process as well.
Right.
So this is not the first time this is the first time we've received a formal presentation, which is typical. But going back, the Board of Education has been working on their budget for the last 5 months, from when the initial budget forms were forwarded out. And we've had a couple of meetings already prepping us for, well, we received the superintendent's budget. So the only surprise, if anything, tonight was what the Board of Education number came in at. So I wanted to remind the public that and remind the board that regarding questions, we're going to have plenty of time to ask questions. So didn't want to go too much into depth. I would usually entertain questions for the Board of Education. If there's anything real high level or anything that was heard tonight, we could certainly entertain them, but I would encourage the Board of Finance members to submit questions. I believe we talked about this at our last meeting, submitting questions so that they're answered in a timely fashion and not scrambled a week or two before our meetings in early March, which I'll discuss in a little bit under new business. Is there anything that the Board of Finance has for the Board of Education high level this evening before we bring the town up?
Can I do one high-level one?
One high
Is that
level.
all right?
Sure.
I know we want to hurry tonight.
Yep.
I'm just curious, the bonding for the network improvements, I'll say, and the cell phone towers, repeaters, sorry. What's driving that? Are you unable to get cell phone service at the schools? And then, what kind of network do you have now? Is it like Cat 5 or like 100 megabytes per second? Or?
I'm not going to be able to get into the technical.
I don't even know this stuff that well either.
We'll need Mr. Mitchell to help us with that. But our infrastructure meets the needs that we have now. But as I said, every time that we improve or upgrade anything, we're adding to that system. So we want to make sure that we are staying ahead of the curve. We currently have a wire infrastructure that goes to the high school, and I believe from high school out to Adams. We want to extend that wire, that fiber optic network, so that it is more robust out to all of the outbuildings. We want to make sure that we've got the appropriate level of support. And again, I can invite Mr. Mitchell to the next meeting when you're asking questions, and he'll be able to give you a more specific answer. We want to stay ahead of the curve. We don't want to wait until the current one fails. And again, it's important to note that it's classroom instruction. Every classroom has a full Chromebook set. Students from Baldwin and up are traveling with individual Chromebooks. They all have projection in the room as we have here, as well as all of the new copiers come in and are on the internet. The new communication systems run over the internet, and some of the new security right? The buildings themselves, the facilities, everything runs through now. So we want to grow that out. We have cell service in all of our buildings, but our buildings are built out of block and steel, and so you don't get good reliable signals in all areas of the building. And again, we want to make sure that we have solid, reliable cell signals everywhere in the building, not just for convenience, but it's also a safety concern as well.
All right. I'll save a bunch for later. It's
We
usually a
look
late
forward
night
to the
night.
Q&A part of the next couple of evenings together.
Thank you again.
And Mr. Ells, I'll just
Yes,
mention, if you haven't
please
seen
do.
it yet, we've responded to about 50 questions from the Board of Education in writing. We will make sure that we share that document with you, and then any questions that you submit to us, we will add to that, and I'm sure we'll be above 50 by the time we add your questions and responses to that written document. We just think it's a helpful way to track the conversation.
That would be great. I would ask, I guess, this is more for Tracy. I believe this presentation you just gave us is actually on the Board of Education website, right?
It may still be the draft budget.
It
If
is.
it's not, yeah, I'll
The
make
January
sure
one.
that after
Make sure.
tonight, we wanted to share this with you tonight first,
Yeah.
but it will be changed to this presentation tomorrow.
Okay, so I just want to make sure. Oh,
Is it?
has all the reductions and stuff.
Great.
Oh, great, okay.
okay.
It's the same one you emailed to us, right?
Yes.
A couple days back. Yeah.
It was, yeah.
So the budget is updated on the website, but the presentation
The slides are not. Yes, so the budget.
Most of it's
I'll
there.
make sure that, yeah, a lot of it is the same, it's the
It's more
numbers.
detailed.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure that when we have our workshops and have the public meeting, that the latest are uploaded on our board pack, and also whatever the latest set of questions are. I did, again, old school, I printed it out when you got it, or sent it to us, and then all the questions as well. So just making sure that those PDFs or whatever are uploaded so we have the latest information.
Great, and we just won't start a new document, we'll keep building on the 50-some questions we've already responded to.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
That's part of this. Yeah. Let's do it to attachments. No, we don't got it. Oh, sorry, we're having side conversations. Well, let me ask the board of, come on up.
You're on.
I'll get you up there. When Linda sent the budget, Linda, when you sent the updated budget, you also sent an attachment
I did see
that
that.
had the questions, right? There were 2 attachments.
Shows how old we are.
I printed off the 2 attachments and it was sent to the entire Board of Finance. I just wanted to.
It should have been sent to everybody.
Okay, well, we'll,
I can resend it.
yeah, if you could just make sure and then resend it. I guess it'd be better just to resend it in case it didn't get through. There's always that spam filter thing, so. Thank you. Okay, so now we're gonna go to item number 7.
Oh, no, yeah, it's there. It's the second attachment. It's not in the same.
So, amazing.
Whatever.
It was there. Receive the proposed town budget for fiscal year 2024-2025. First Selectman Matthew Hoey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and the entire board. The woman behind the curtain is Karen Quirchers, who's running the slideshow, so I will be asking her to move forward at various points. Good evening. I'm pleased to present the Board of Selectmen budget for fiscal year 24-25, which was unanimously approved by the Board of Selectmen. I want to thank my fellow Board of Selectmen colleagues for all the work we've done to craft this budget. It took a little bit of compromise, which is always a good thing. But I also want to thank the Board of Finance for their participation in the budget workshops, budget presentations. I think it's imperative for you folks to have a little more depth when we make this summary presentation, which is really what it is. And I also want to thank you for the questions that you raised during that, because I think that helped elucidate not only for you but for us some of the things that are behind the scenes. So, I'm I'm sure that Drs. Palestracci and Freeman would agree with me that a budget is really a reflection of the values of our communities, our respective communities, the town of Guilford at large and our school community. So I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. As we typically talk about, one of the main functions of town government, first and foremost, I think most would agree, is public protection and safety. Second would more than likely be town services. Right behind that, support for the Board of Education, maintaining our infrastructure and sustainability, as well as enhancing the quality of life with the perks and the extras that our community has come to expect, if not demand, over time. Karen, if you would. My staff was very influential in getting me to shorten this presentation from previous versions of same. So I think we used to have 3 pages of budget objectives and key factors. Mary Jane can get all the credit for it, and Karen. And I thank them for that.
You send them the fruit basket.
Exactly. Well, I could probably still stretch it, but I'll try to save that this evening. Obviously, as I just mentioned, maintaining a high level of services is something this community has come to expect, and I dare say, in many cases, demand to a certain extent. But we need to do so by assuring appropriate staffing levels to meet the community expectations while also optimizing employee performance. And you'll see later in here that we are adding some resources to maximize employee performance while delivering key services. We continue to support the theory that we should fully fund pensions and OPEB liabilities at actuarially recommended levels so that we don't place undue burdens on future generations or future taxpayers in this community. An essential goal has been to protect the tax relief program for veterans, elderly, and disabled. As I think you are all familiar, since you set the cap, there are some 700 families in this community who are enjoying the respective elderly tax freeze program, and we think that is something worth protecting, and it's reflected here. One of the things, this is the key factor in this budget, is the fact that we've had to address the Guilford Employees Association salary deficiencies, and as I think you recall from last year, we entered into an out-of-contract agreement to raise the tide, if you would, because so many of our GEA employees were barely at or above working working wage levels, or living wage, I'm sorry, they're working at living wage levels. So this is year 2 of the 2-year program, so the second group of employees will receive the salary enhancement treatment this year. And we will continue to invest in information technologies. I think you heard that during the budget presentations. EnerGov is expected to go live with the online permitting. I'm hearing as possibly as early as April, which would be wonderful news, but I've been involved in data conversions and those programs before, so optimism doesn't always win. And I think you saw that there were some other significant increases in software costs, which ironically at a CCM meeting this morning, a board meeting this morning, one of the things that we were talking about were all our budget pressures. Everybody is seeing these huge increases in subscription costs for software. So, okay, Karen, please. Here's a summary. Town operating budget is scheduled to rise by $1,369,488, or a 3.96% increase. Our operating capital budget is relatively flat at a 0.8% increase. And debt service is flat. It's completely flat. And we'll talk a little bit about that a little later when we get to Mary Jane's favorite slide, the one that depicts the curve of our debt retirement. That 2.99%, and I want to thank the Board of Selectmen. There was a little bit of debate at our last budget workshop. We were looking at, I think, a 3.13% number, but actually during the workshop, Mitch received an email from our insurance consultant and indicated that there were some additional savings that they were able to come. So I'll be perfectly frank, there was discussion about keeping that in abeyance with the possibility that you guys may be looking for cuts, but we decided to include that so that as opposed to keeping that on the sidelines. So we're able to get it under 3%. Not that 3% is a magic number, but their history seems to suggest that getting under bigger numbers is something we've always tried to do. What I want to talk a little bit about is that operating budget increase. 75% of that is salaries, is contracted salaries increases, plus, as you'll see, the addition of 2 new resources, one at social services and one the school resource officer, which is shared with the Board of Education. And we're happy to provide, as long as we can hire the policemen in place, right? Get them on the force, which is a subject for a whole nother conversation about recruitment and retention of public safety employees. And then just when you add in the cost on the information systems to the salary increases, we're looking at 85% of the increase is between those 2 line items. Pretty significant, which leaves about $210,000 in increases for the entire balance of the budget. And I think everyone has experienced the post-COVID cost of goods increases that seem to be never ending. So we think that this is a budget that's very responsible given the level of increases in salaries. Karen? As you guys had witnessed, the requests always seem to exceed what we can afford. So the board has made some revisions from the originally submitted budgets by the department heads. Out of the operating budget, we cut $518,000. Out of the capital budget, we knocked it down by $961. We did a couple other things. There's some suggestions that we use some ARPA funds for some of these this year, but it still allows us to stay at that level and provide additional acquisitions for the community. So the total operating budget was cut by nearly $1.5 million. And that's what we're submitting to you this evening. Karen? All right, increases in the operating budget, and this is going to start to sound like a broken record because salaries drive most of it. And again, at Park and Recreation, there's $153,000 in salary increases. However, there are some offsets by some cuts that we had made in other areas, and the use of some program fees to support the operation of the programs. So the Park and Recreation's budget increase is at $91,000, despite the fact that we have salary increases at $153,000. In Public Works, the salaries account for $70,000 of the $92,000. And that's one of the areas where cost increases have been pretty significant over time and continue to be. Youth and Family Services reflects $133,000. All of that is salaries. We netted out the balance of their line items, so that's only salaries. That includes a new position for those who are in attendance. That's a new social worker, which will be embedded in the police department. And I won't go into all the details. I think most of you heard the justification that both the police department and Youth and Family Services put forth to justify that position. And actually, ironically, about a week after that presentation, I happened to meet the embedded social worker in Brantford. Brantford, I think as you might have recalled from that presentation, Brantford was one of the other 6 communities in the state of Connecticut that have embedded a social worker in their police department. The balance of them, the other 5, were all major urban centers. So, yeah, Brantford beat us to the punch, but I still think we're ahead of the curve for communities of our size. IT, now, this is the reverse. IT, there's only about $10,000 in increases in salaries, but with the licensing and now the Energov annual fees represents $139,000 of that $150,000 in budget increases. At the police department, we've, not to beat the drum, but this reflects an SRO, which is shared with the schools, and the American Rescue Plan funds being reduced. Same thing for youth and family services. Not all 133,000 of that is just in contracted salary increases. We have backed off, as we had said we would do when appropriate, on the use of the ARPA funds. We're also backing off because we need to spend the money, and we can't commit monies for salaries beyond December 31st of this year. So that's one of the reasons. Fire department salary adjustments are pending negotiations here, so there's not a misrepresentation, but it is not a complete picture. As you are well aware, the anticipated increases, salary increases for the fire department are in reserve for personnel. Karen? Increases in employee benefits, which I think is a misnomer. We misstated this. There are no increases in employee benefits as the total line item, but there are some minor ones in between. I mentioned this, I think, at one of the budget workshops. This is really a key contributor to allowing us to move forward with the salary treatments that we put in place. Because if you consider that 20 to 22% of our budget of $45 million, this represents about 22% of it is flat. So that gives us the opportunity to absorb some costs elsewhere in the budget. And you'll see the same thing when you look at the debt service. Between debt service and employee benefits, I think it's about $19 million of a total $45 million budget, and that's 42%. So once again, we see the opportunity here with no increases in those two major categories to make the investments we think we need to continue to provide those services we need. Under the retirement plan contributions are at 3.23%. That's just based on contractual obligations, but it's also based on the impact of the decision the Board of Selectmen made to grant the first COLA since 2008. And that was done for all of our unions, our retirees under retiree contracts, not just the police department, which is the only union that has a contract that requires that the Board of Selectmen look at COLAs every 2 years. We made the decision, and rightfully so, that if we're doing for one, we should be doing for all. So that impact is reflected in the retirement contributions. The medical benefits, we talked briefly about this the other day. What's interesting is because we went out to bid last year, and we received the bid awards in the contract. We went to contract after the budget had been approved by the voters. So what happens is we realize those savings in the 23-24 budget, but the budgetary impact in terms of increases or decreases will be felt here. So that's why you see a pretty significant drop. We don't get it twice, but this is a paper savings. So, but again, keeping that at a 1.5% drop, I think is really remarkable. It's so different than some of the years we've had in the past, where, as Dr. Freeman mentioned, the increases in the medical costs just were not out of control, but so significant that it impacted our ability to do much else with the budget. Karen, please. Components of our capital budget, vehicles. This would have been a higher line item had we not made a decision to fund the new police vehicles out of the American Rescue Plan funds. We have successfully executed a contract to purchase 6 new vehicles, and they are the hybrid models. I think you remember we were talking about it. There's a significant difficulty in sourcing and getting those. So we utilized the allocation we had for 23-24 budget as well as the 24-25 budget because we didn't want them to go to another department. So we are suggesting the use of ARPA funds for the ones that normally would have been in the 24-25 budget. And it's not just the cars, as you know, the upfit for those cars is about another 40% of the cost of the vehicle. Also, there are vehicles for fire, health, natural resources, park and rec, and the police van. The equipment line item is largely at fire department, over at the golf course, park and rec, police and public works, and the detail will be in the capital budget that's online, available to you on the budget book. Infrastructure, sidewalks and drainage, not an awful lot of money there, but we continue to try to fund those. Building maintenance, park and rec's HVAC, as well as the community center flooring and ceiling tiles. Technology is an investment over at the library, some cameras, some security cameras to protect our employees as well as our facilities. And the Public Works mobile system, which allows them to enter data as they're out in the field. We had a couple of units, and this will now be able to equip the entire fleet to have access from the field. And then fields and lakes improvements, largely public park and rec rather for lighting, irrigation, and pumps, and then also the cost for the lake Quantapod weed control. Karen? Thank you. This slide is one that we toyed with a little bit, whether to keep it in here or not. What we have long been saying is we wanted to continue to fund capital projects in the operating budget. But I dare say that we're probably going to need to start to consider the fact that, yeah, we've gotten it back to where it was, in 2018, but inflation has knocked that number down. So I think you'll probably see the Board of Selectmen looking to try to boost that number next year. This was not the year to do that. Karen? So the components of the bonded debt service, the gross debt service is about $10,417,000, and you can see how it's broken out between the new Guilford High School, the traditional Board of Ed projects, as well as the traditional town projects, and the percent attributed to each of those entities. And this does include the estimates for the 2024 issuance that will probably go out in July or August when we go back to the market. Karen? All right, Mary Jane, you want to take over?
Over the past few years,
You said I don't know. You tell her, Mike.
Come on up. Come on down.
It is your favorite slide. You own it.
Back in the hot seat.
Come on, you like this slide.
So as you know, we have been trying to reduce our debt service year over year since the height of it, and you can see that on that slide, and we've done a really good job of it with the use of the premium credits that we've been receiving. So we're keeping that trend going this year, but I just wanted to talk about that just for a moment because what I did for our past bond that we just went out in August 2023 was I did a 15-year bond instead of a 20-year bond, which is keeping that number a little bit flat now, but in the end, we're saving hundreds of thousands in interest. So my graph might not be as low this year as we'd like to see it, but over time we are saving a considerable amount of money, and I'll be looking at that year over year as we move forward. Because you see we got a big dip coming, so we're able to, between the premiums that we have and knowing that big decreases coming. We're able to do that with the 15-year bonds because of that. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that to explain the strategy that we've been using.
Great. And are you anticipating 15-year bonds for the issuance this summer?
I did, in our budget, I did budget them at 20, only because I'd have no idea what we're doing. So it'll be yet to be seen. And it make a difference how much premiums we expect to have, because we kind of know going in how much we might get, so that helps with that decision and whether or not we can do the 15.
It's our cash
or
flow
20.
versus, based
Correct.
on the yield curve versus what the market wants, they're able to pay in premium.
Correct, yeah. But I am trying to keep the budget for debt. Finance directors like to keep debt and capital budgets pretty flat, the combination of the two. It helps with budgeting year over year. And because if we take those, if each year we do it without using the credits and that goes like this, it's hard for you guys to manage your budgets over time. So this is, the best way to do it for us.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just get out of here as fast as she can. Right. Karen, please. We want to talk a little bit about what this budget includes for ARPA funding. As I indicated, this will be the last year that we can utilize, we're going to utilize ARPA funding for salaries. We had talked about that when we first started using it, and we knew we would need to wean ourselves off of it. These are the areas where I won't bore you to death. You can all read where those are. But these reflect half-year salaries. Okay, over time, we have utilized $741,634 in ARPA funds for salaries in the current budgeted year, which reflected a decrease over what we had the previous year. We were at $267,000, so this amounts to $133,510 for fiscal year 2024-25, which means next year there's going to be a built-in increase of $133,510 because the ARPA funds will have disappeared at that point. We are also suggesting and planning on utilizing ARPA funds for some capital items, which is fully anticipated and allowed under the ARPA guidelines. That would be the Office 365 migration and setup, and I know, Jonathan, we'll probably have some conversations about that. The digitizing of files in various departments, and then the library carpet replacement project, which is, I think, 2 years overdue, because we've held that in abeyance for a while. Karen? Thank you. Components of the operating revenue, you guys can read this, but there are a couple of things to highlight here. Interest income is up for obvious reasons. We've been, if you take a look, you saw the numbers earlier today. We're probably on target to hit 1.1, around $1.1 million in interest income this year. So we have adjusted it to by $250,000 and are targeting $750,000. Who knows where interest rates are going? We got a little scared the other day. They may not be coming down as fast as we thought they were. But the central bank will make their choice, or the Reserve will make their choice on that. But this is an area where I think the Board of Finance can have an opportunity to impact the overall tax impact, and if they feel comfortable moving this number up. I wouldn't move it down, but you have the opportunity to move it up. The building permit number continues to be very strong. We are estimating about $842,000 for fiscal year 23-24, and are a little bit concerned about going much higher than the $750. But again, this is an area we could have some conversations on as well. Over the past 5 years, the aggregate budget for the building department has been $1.925 million. The total revenues over that same period have been $3.5 million. So this is what justified the investments we've made in the building department with a new permit technician, and then also adding an additional part-time building inspector official. So this is a department that is generating revenue based on the building fees. And I want to thank the members of the committee. I think at least 2 of them are here who reviewed and revised our building permit rates. I think Veronica and Lou are both on that committee, if I'm not mistaken. So, job well done. The state revenue is an estimate at this point. It's based on the biennial budget, which was passed last year. Some folks might have heard that the governor last week at his budget address to the opening day at the legislature talked about shifting some funds, out of K through 12 education to early childhood, which needs it. I can say with some certainty that the leadership, both the Republican and the Democratic leadership in Hartford, are dead set against that, because they've gotten education funding to a stable position after so long. And actually, at that meeting I was at CCM this morning, they had it was a legislative breakfast up at the State Armory, and the leadership was there, and it was very clear that they're not going to let this happen. So we're very comfortable with the fact that we'll see what we were committed to receive in the legislation last year. All right. Karen, this is a disappointing slide based on what we saw last year, right? Last year we saw a 35% increase in our grand list. This year we're going to see a 0.03 increase. This is also very consistent with what I've heard from my peers, and there were, I think, 13 communities who had revals effective last October, in October of 2022, and everybody is pretty much is seeing the same. Everybody that I've talked to, I haven't talked to all 12 of those other communities, but I've talked to 4 or 5 of them, and they're seeing the exact same thing. It is just stabilized. So.
And those that went through reval recently, there was an article, I can't remember which community, but there was a community that had a 32% increase in their grant list. So
it's been fairly consistent across the state.
If you get the reval, you're in the 30s on that, and then you flatten. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to present the Board of Selectmen's budget. Certainly I would entertain questions, but Mr. Chairman, you sort of indicated you like high level only, but I'd be happy to answer any.
High level.
If I can,
yes,
or Mary Jane will answer them. So.
Well, I do want to add, similar to the Board of Education, that we have been, as you alluded to at the beginning, that we've been part of the process, workshops pretty extensively. Most of us, I think actually all of us, attended, whether it was Zoom or in person, and heard all of these, and actually it's quite a feat. I think when we also, the initial numbers coming in, it was I'm sure it was a lot of work for the Board of Selectmen to get it down to what was presented. Not that it wasn't all needed, but obviously those, the numbers are higher this year, as we've all talked about. So I do commend the town and the Board of Selectmen, and of course the Board of Education for what they've presented. Are there any high-level questions for our first selectman? And again, I would encourage, I want to make sure I get it correct. Any questions?
Absolutely.
Should be funneled, I would think, through Mary Jane, and will be compiled just like the Board of Education, so that we all have a document that we can refer to during the both the public hearing and the workshop. Workshops.
That's what workshop would be preferable.
Hopefully, right? Anything?
No, I'm good. I'll wait.
You know I can't resist. How about just one?
You
Start
want
calling
one?
it a night. Sure. I know it's late. I was a little concerned. We went to the workshops, and a lot of departments are opting for the electric or the hybrid car. And I'm just wondering, is this going to be a matter of policy that across the board, we're going to go for the electric, wait a minute, the hybrid, even if it's more expensive than the gasoline engine cars?
It is already the policy of this administration that where applicable, we will purchase hybrids or EVs. We are not at the point where we're actively looking at EVs for a couple of reasons, one of which is we don't have charging stations available everywhere. And they are much more expensive than the hybrids. So your point's well taken. But but just, you know, let me remind folks that we enjoy the status as a silver level sustainable Connecticut community. We received a climate leader designation from Sustainable Connecticut. We have a climate resilience plan, a coastal resilience plan that has been a model as espoused by DEEP. We are a community that's committed to sustainability, or at least this administration is, and I think our community probably is as well. So, thank you.
Thank you. With that, we will move on to item number 8, committee reports, building permits.
Can I jump in on committee reports?
Yeah, sure.
I wanted to join the committee to talk about the issues they have finding the firefighters. And most of the meeting's been scheduled during the day, and I'm really sorry, but I just can't balance that with work.
I've been there, so I can give an update.
Oh.
Well, I just wanted to let you know that I think I got to withdraw.
No,
because
no, thank you for-
I just can't make it.
Okay.
But I did, make the one comment that perhaps you can look at cash incentives instead of going backwards on what we've done with the retirement programs to the retirement program. That's kind of what my take from it at a very high level.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Yep.
So we've met twice so far. The first was, we received a presentation from the fire department around, basically like the main issue, it's a statewide issue, so they're having recruitment and retention issues just like every other sector. Police, fire, EMS, teachers, they're all having the same issue. So what's happening is that towns are just stealing each other's people, specifically paramedics. So since we do run an ALS, Advanced Life Support service here, you have to have paramedics on to be able to run ALS. You get higher reimbursement rate from insurance companies, Medicare, Medicaid specifically, but those are the people that they want to take to other departments. So the fire department did a really good job presenting. They had a comparison of post-retirement benefits regionally. Guilford's the only one that doesn't have a medical benefit. So that's what we then explored in our next meeting, was how do we get to a place where we could offer a post-retirement medical benefit between the gap of 55 to 65 when they're eligible for Medicare. So we got presentations from the International Association for Firefighters has a plan. The state partnership plan came and presented, and then obviously we have our town health insurance. There's pros and cons to all of them. So there hasn't been like a final decision. I think the town consultant was gonna go and basically like create a comparison of all three plans. The International Association for Firefighters plan, I think they had to go back and ask some questions because I think we thought that you could just put the retirees in, but then they said you have to bring all active firefighters on as well, so that might not be an option. State partnership, you can just bring the retirees in. It's not a high deductible plan, it's a PPO plan. So it's a little bit different in terms of the comparison, but that's where we are. So I think we want to get to a place where we can offer the medical because everybody around us is offering medical. So if we're going to remain competitive, I think we have to figure out something for the medical, at the very least. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
When's,
So March
when's-
1st is our next
meeting? Okay.
Yeah, so we'll be able to go through all three plans, and I think there are just some follow-up questions for each plan that I think Mitch was gonna try to get answers to.
Great, so.
The pro of that firefighters plan was that the OPEB liability would be off the town. But the con is that all the active folks have to go too.
So there'll be more to, so you'll report.
So more to
in
come,
March. More to
yeah.
come in March, great. Thank you. Okay. Item number 9, old business. I just wanted to follow up on the fiscal year 22-23 audit report. I believe that's available in the finance office, and the audit presentation is scheduled to be for our March regular meeting. So we will have the audit presentation and report, audit presentation then. So I just wanted to follow up on that. And then, is there any other old business? Under 10, new business, I just, as I do usually at this meeting every year, just outline the next steps in the budget process. I'm assuming it will be in this room, so we have the live stream capability for the public. Board of Finance public budget hearing will be on Tuesday, March 5th at 7:30. Public forum will be allowed after the presentations by the town and the Board of Education. And then Board of Finance budget workshops are scheduled currently for Thursday, March 7th and Monday, March 11th. Of course, both of those are at 7:30. Public forum will be offered at both workshops, and as I always also remind, it's always possible that both nights might be utilized either to discuss the budget, either due to extended deliberation or weather events, which has happened before. So we have them both scheduled. Public comments should be submitted in writing and are certainly encouraged. Again, we would read them and summarize them in the record during public forum. The town will, I'm sure, if it's not already up, will provide a link or someplace to a quick link to provide comments, as has been done in the last few years. And that is it for new business. Any other new business? Item number 11, public forum. Hearing no public forum. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
We adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.